Good evening, and it's such a pleasure for me to join you today at this very, very important event and very important conversation. As you know, the event is the gala supporting HEAF, and the conversation is obviously about how to make our society more equitable, more diverse, and more inclusive. Why are these two themes so incredibly important? Well, we've just come through an amazing crisis, actually several of them, a health crisis, an employment crisis, a social justice crisis, and a racial crisis. Unfortunately, all of those crises have shown that the way one enters and when one leaves a crisis depends very much on one's zip code, on your economic and socioeconomic status. And this is where HEAF is really important, because over the last year and a half, much earlier, HEAF has shown an ability to be resilient, to reach out, and to support the communities that they serve. And some of those communities are the most underserved communities in New York. HEAF has been critical during this last period in supporting people from middle school, high school, and into college, as our young people have continued to work through the challenges of receiving a first-rate education and getting themselves prepared for and entering into college. And so, since I have been a participant and an observer of HEAF since I was honored in 2015, has been really gratifying for me to watch and observe how resilient HEAF has been in terms of supporting the lives of so many young people in New York. That takes me to my second theme, which is why is it that today it's really important for us to recognize a critical leader in the New York financial community, and that is my friend, Adena Friedman. You should know that I've known Adena for about 20 years. I first met her through my wife. Adena was just starting to work at the Nasdaq in the data and strategy area. My wife was a chief regulator of the financial markets. Her name is Annette Nazareth. And so I've come to know Adena as a friend over many, many years. More recently, Adena, my wife Annette, and I have been living in Washington, commuting up to New York on the dreaded 6 a.m. shuttle. And while I took a nap, Annette, my wife, and Adena were talking about, very, very tough, arcane topics of market structure. So I know she's a deep, deep intellectual. The other thing I've come to know about Adena is that she cares deeply about diversity and inclusion. She has always believed in a kind of capitalism that is much more inclusive, much more cooperative, that works towards bringing everybody on board. More recently, in her role as president and CEO of the NASDAQ, she led an effort to change the NASDAQ listing standards to encourage companies to have more diversity on their boards, both female diversity, disadvantaged, underrepresented minorities, and individuals from the LGBTQ plus communities. And she's done that in a very sophisticated way that was approved by the SEC. And that's where these two things come together. Because it's only by having greater diversity at the very top of the house, at our corporate boards, that we can support the kind of work that HEAF does in bringing people, young people up into the American society by giving them a chance to have the American dream of going to college and then going from there into great jobs in corporate society, in the private sector, in the service sector, whatever may be their choice. And so it was clear to me that when I had a chance to bring Adena Friedman and HEAF together, that it was going to be a combination that would be very, very positive. And indeed, that is exactly what has happened. So that is why this evening we have a chance to listen to my good friend Adena Friedman, to recognize her and HEAF, and to have our friend Alan Murray participate in the conversation. So I'm pleased to be here to introduce Adena Friedman and to thank her for supporting HEAF in this very, very important year. Thank you very much.
Adena, congratulations on being a Harlem Educational Activities Fund Gala honoree. It's a great honor. It's a great program that has helped hundreds of kids from underserved communities in the New York area throughout their educational career. But I think you're the perfect honoree. You really, in your time as CEO of NASDAQ, you've really put a big focus on diversity, equity, and inclusion. Why is that so important to you?
Well, first of all, thank you so much. And it really is truly an honor. I was so surprised and honored to be asked, and it's just wonderful. But when we think about what it means to have a well-functioning economy, we have to find a way to make it so that opportunity is available to all. And I think that Nasdaq stands for the economic progress of this country. Nasdaq stands for opportunities and democratizing access to capital markets, democratizing access to investing. But that all starts with making sure that everyone starts on a level playing field. And I think that's where we have the most work to do. And really creating that the opportunity for everyone to have the life that they deserve, the life that they want. I think it's really the starting point. So that's why we care so much about it.
So how would you assess where we are now? I mean, we've just had this extraordinary year and a half where in some ways the corporate focus on these issues has increased. I mean, I hear it every day now. It's become a strategic priority for most CEOs, but at the same time, things have happened in society that have made the problem worse. How do you assess where we are?
Well, I think that we have to recognize that we're still at the very beginning of this journey to make it so that we can truly have an economy and a society that offers that opportunity to all. I agree with you. The pandemic, on the one hand, has heightened everyone's awareness of the inequities that exist and the need for us to do something about it. And corporate America is stepping up. And you're seeing a lot of bold actions by a lot of leaders within the corporate world, walking the talk and trying to make sure that they are in fact having that positive impact. And they're usually using, the lens through which they look is really the lens of their company. What impact can they have based on the mission of their company? And that's what we've done. But I think that at the same time, we have to recognize that the inequities are very significant. These are big problems to have. No one company can solve them by themselves. Even every company together can't completely solve the problem. It really does need to be done through partnership with both, organizations like HEAF, as well as the government, as well as corporate America. We all have to step up together.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point, and HEAF is an interesting piece of the puzzle, because one of the things I see happening out there is companies competing for the same small group of people rather than figuring out how do you get more people from underserved communities into the pipeline, which I think HEAP does. But how do you think about that? How do you make sure when you're hiring at Nasdaq you're not just competing against other high-end firms for a small pot of people?
Yeah, no, it's a great question, and I actually agree with you. I think that's one of the wonderful things that HEAF is helping with, which is finding these incredible young people who just need to have a chance. They need to be given an environment that allows them to really maximize their intellectual curiosity and gives them access to resources and experiences that it really enables them to become, have that equal opportunity. That's the great thing about HEAF. But as companies, one of the things we've been focused on is how do we really broaden the pipeline of talent that we can bring into the organization. So we had about more than 150 interns, for instance, over the last summer.
Wow.
And we work very hard to identify colleges and programs that allow us to have a much broader pool of applicants and try to bring in more diversity at the entry level that then give them the experience of working here, frankly, allow them to put that on their resume, but hopefully give them an opportunity here too once they graduate, so we can really continue to expand our pipeline of talent.
You've had your own impressive journey to make it here to the pinnacle of finance, and congratulations on that. But what would you say, these HEAF, Harlem Educational Activities Fund students, they start in middle school and they work with the program for 11 years. If you were to speak to those sixth graders, what would you say to them? What advice would you give them based on your own journey?
Yeah, well, first of all, the fact that HEAF works with students for 11 years is the secret to their success. That consistency, that ability for you to work with them as a preteen or early teen, all the way through their teen years, through their college years, that's what makes HEAF a truly differentiated program, in my opinion.
Yeah.
But as you're looking at a sixth grader, think about yourself when you were 11 or 12. What were you curious about? What were you focused on? And in my opinion, I think that what I would say gives advice to those sixth graders is be intellectually curious. Be curious about the world around you. I loved to learn languages. I learned French and Russian when I was in high school.
Wow.
And I went to France and I went to Russia so that I could actually understand the world around me in a different way. And of course, why Russia? Well, it was the 80s, so it was actually a really interesting time to be studying that particular part of the world. But I just want to say, I think that intellectual curiosity is really important. And then find that thing that you find most interesting. Like, I was really interested in that international relations and in learning languages. Maybe someone else could be really interested in learning science. And so find the thing that you just get up in the morning and want to learn more about, and dig in and enjoy it and discover and leverage the HEAF program to help you with that discovery, so that you know that when you're ready, when you're coming out of college, you can achieve anything.
As you and I talked about, we are at this interesting moment in the business community. I think there's a seriousness today that there has never been in the past, and that's a good thing. But how far away are we as a society from really achieving equal opportunity?
As humans, we're impatient.
Yes.
And we want to see action and change right away. If I were to look back on the day that I joined Nasdaq, it was in 1993, and I think about how many women were in the industry, how women were treated in the industry, what opportunities were available to them in the industry, it was a very different world. 1993, so that was, 28 years ago. So it's now 2021, and I'm the CEO of Nasdaq. There are other, we've got Jane Fraser as the CEO of Citi. You've got a lot of women in very senior roles. It's a very different environment. I would say that it's getting towards, it isn't there yet, but getting towards an equal opportunity environment.
Yeah.
In many respects. And that's almost 30 years of time. So we do have to measure things over periods of decades, but be consistent, be persistent,
Sustained
and don't
attention.
let up. Don't let up. Yeah.
Don't let up. Yeah, really, really good advice. And let me. I mean, this has been a great conversation, by the way. Thank you so much for doing it. And I think there's been a lot of pearls of wisdom that have come out to the crowd. But you have a lot of business leaders and rising business leaders in the audience. What are the 3 things that you would tell them to do to make sure we continue to make progress on these things?
Yeah, I think the first thing is, as I said, don't be afraid to be bold, but be prepared. If you're going to take a bold action, be really prepared around it. The second thing is, listen to diverse voices around you. Don't surround yourself with everyone who's like you. It's very easy to do, by the way. And I can't.
It's a natural instinct.
It's a natural instinct. So fight the natural instinct. Make sure you have diverse voices around you. When we were developing the diversity proposal, we had a very diverse team. And I can tell you those moments that really mattered in that was when someone from that diverse part of the organization spoke up and said, let me tell you what this means to me.
Yeah.
And if we didn't have that voice, we wouldn't have understood that, right? So it's really important. And I think that the last thing is be consistent. Don't see it as like a moment in time. See it as a journey and figure out what does that mean over the next 10 years and not just over the next 2.
Adena, fabulous. Thank you so much for taking the time. Really, really helpful, and congratulations on your journey.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Alan. It's great to be with you.